April 22nd,
He's getting ahead of
2024.
himself.
There you go.
Commissioner Anthony, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Please stand. Begin.
I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
City Planner, would you call roll?
Is my microphone working okay?
Yeah, we can hear it.
Okay. Chairman Morrissey,
Here.
Vice Chair Malik,
Present.
Commissioner Rosales,
Present.
Commissioner Balma,
Present.
Commissioner Anthony,
Present.
and Commissioner Dodds.
Present.
Commissioner Ogden had sent an email last Friday indicating he would not be able to attend, so we do have a quorum of 6 commissioners present. Thanks.
So do we have any matters not on the agenda?
Chair Morrissey, we do not.
Okay. In that case, then, would someone like to make a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting?
Make the motion to approve minutes.
Commissioner Dodds, anybody want to second that?
I'll second.
Commissioner Balma seconds. Please vote.
Let the record show that the motion passes 6-0.
So I see there's nothing on the consent calendar or transportation items. So we can go right into public hearing. And item number 4 tonight is the consideration of a conditional use permit to allow a truck rental business accessory to an existing automotive repair shop at 2001 Oceanside Boulevard. The project site is 17,000 square foot parcel located at the Loma Alta neighborhood planning area with a general plan land use designation of light industrial and a corresponding zoning designation of limited industrial. 7 days tire and brakes at 2001 Oceanside Boulevard. So if we could have disclosures, starting with you, Commissioner Anthony.
I have the staff report and I'm very familiar with the area.
Commissioner Rosales.
Staff report driven by many times, so no, I know where it is.
Okay. I read the staff report, talked to the owner today, and know the site. Commissioner Malik, Vice Chair.
Read the staff report, very familiar with the site, and drove by it again today.
I also read the staff report and I'm very familiar with the site.
Read the staff report, very familiar with the site, and I visit the area.
Okay.
Good
Thanks,
evening. Good evening, Chair Morrissey and Planning Commissioners. I'm Rob Demahowski with the Planning Division and here to present a conditional use permit to allow U-Haul trucks accessory to 7-day tires and brakes. The project site is located at the corner of Oceanside Boulevard and Crouch Street and is currently occupied by an auto repair shop that has been in business for several years. The site has a general plan, land use, and zoning designation of limited industrial and is located within the Loma Alta planning area. The site is surrounded by adjacent industrial uses as well as the Loma Alta Creek alignment to the south and the Crouch Street Sprinter to the southwest. The request is for a conditional use permit to allow U-Haul truck rentals accessory to an existing automotive business. As proposed, the business would have a maximum inventory of 6 15-foot trucks. A dedicated parking area with 6 8-by-23-foot spaces would be located behind the building. And per the draft conditions of approval, no display of vehicles or parking of vehicles shall occur in front of the building or on the corner visible from Oceanside Boulevard and Crouch Street. A truck rental business is consistent with the light industrial land uses and the designation It is compatible with existing and potential industrial uses on site and in the surrounding area, and the conditions of approval would ensure that the proposed use is not detrimental to public health, safety, and welfare. As such, staff is recommending the Planning Commission by motion confirm issuance of a categorical exemption per sequa and adopt a Planning Commission resolution approving the conditional use permit with findings and conditions of approval. This concludes my presentation. I'm available for questions. The property owner indicated that he wasn't able to attend today, but indicated there might be a representative from the property available for questions, but there is no presentation planned. Thank you.
Do we have any questions for Rob?
Could you go back to the diagram just once again? I want to make sure that I'm clear where the parking is. Where is Oceanside Boulevard and Crouch, right in the upper left corner?
Yes, Commissioner Malik, the upper left corner is Crouch, a little better shown on the site here. The alignment, it shows Crouch Street to the left and Oceanside Boulevard there to the north. The parking spaces would be accessed by an existing drive aisle. There's 2 existing driveways. There's no planned site improvements. The parking would utilize existing facilities. It's all paved, and there would be no interference with existing operations or traffic flow on site or in the area.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure that those vehicles that go back to the diagram again, please. The 3 blue in the upper right are actually next to Oceanside Boulevard, correct?
Correct, and those are 5 customer parking spaces or employee spaces that are pre-existing.
Right. There's 2 structures on that site, correct?
Correct, and the oval identified on the side is an existing propane tank. They offer propane sales that has been in existence for some time.
We got that. I'm familiar with the site. I just want to make sure that is the 2000, the square that says 2001 Oceanside Boulevard structure, the smaller structure that's at an angle, and then behind these parking spaces over to your right would be where the other building is?
Correct. The business operates from both of those locations, and I believe I can show, there's a better image of the existing building and the corner site, both operated by the same business.
Yeah, my only concern was that the parking spaces would be impacting the ingress egress from Oceanside Boulevard in the upper right there, but doesn't appear to be the case, so thanks.
Are there any other questions? Commissioner Obama.
Oh, I was just going to ask Rob, we've got a lot of construction, we have a very large project just up Crouch Street with the apartments, I believe, and condominiums, and a lot of nice amenities for the neighborhood, landscaping and such. And I know for years we've been trying to do improvements to Oceanside Boulevard, but it hasn't really happened, over the years. And here we have a CUP coming up. When does something like landscaping get triggered on a development or a proposal?
Commissioner Obama, there's normally a nexus for the type of improvements. In this case, the conditional use is for a use and not physical development. It did not warrant any additional improvements on the site. If the site was to redevelop or expand in terms of a development plan, that would provide us a mechanism to evaluate streetscape, potential new landscaping, the existing driveways. So in this case, the scale of it did not warrant any additional on-site or off-site improvements.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, there's also, it seems that there's frequently 1 to 3 or 4 vehicles that are listed for sale on the corner there of that lot. So we start to see a lot more things kind of exist in an otherwise open space that should be there for business, but seems to have multiple uses. So that's why I was asking where that other location specifically was, because in the written document, it was to be, I thought, on the south border of the property, but it doesn't appear like that's necessarily the case. They are visible and they are kind of in that location.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Not ideal, but no.
Well, thank you, Rob. Does the applicant have a representative that would like to speak on the issue? So that sounds like that's a no. So do we have any cards to speak on this issue?
Yes, Chair Morrissey, we have one this evening. Ready to proceed. Cameron will come forward. We have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioners. Good evening. I had a little trouble hearing you because I think the mics aren't working, and I'll make use of the projector. That's okay. My name's Cameron. I live in the Fire Mountain neighborhood just above this property, and as some of you commissioners know, I think most of you said you're familiar with the property. This is the northern gateway in and out of the Fire Mountain area. But first of all, I want to thank staff, Rob, Sergio, and their cohorts for preparing the report. I think it's a great report. I have the benefit of seeing this thing every day because I drive in there, out of there every day. This is a better representation of the number of vehicles that sit on that property on a regular basis. So down here is where the vehicle spacing will be for the new U-Hauls. And then allegedly there are spaces here that are for parking that don't seem to be used. I have a few photos I'd like to show. Again, just to show what we see on a regular basis. For instance, this box utility truck is here on the regular. There is a storage container that seems to be permanently sitting there. And as one of the commissioners mentioned, there are cars that sit for sale in the front portion. Listen, I have no problem with the business trying to expand their operations. I'm not against this generally. I'm really just worried about where the reality is of where all of these additional vehicles are going to sit. I do believe they'll put the U-Hauls in back, but as you can see, looking from Skylark towards the back of the property, which is kind of where the new development one of the commissioners mentioned will be sitting, you can see that even SUVs, their headlights sit over the structure, and if these 6 or so vehicles that are parked here are going to be moved for U-Hauls, where will they sit on the property? I don't know if those are customer vehicles or employee vehicles or stored vehicles. You guys know that area as well as I do. It's a lot of industrial apparatus that goes on, and there's stacking of tires and other things. So I would just implore the commissioners to really think this through. Again, I'm not here to say don't do it because I don't want to be a thorn in this business operator's side, but it is what we see going in and out every day, and I'm just concerned. So I wish there had been a representative here that you could have inquired of, and that's all I've got to say. I appreciate everybody's time. Thank you.
Thank you. So that concludes our public testimony. So bringing it back to dais. By the way, can you, so Cameron said he couldn't hear us very well, so I guess we can pass this around for lack of a better, okay. We got a thumbs up, so.
Okay. Can you hear me? I'll make a motion to approve.
Commissioner Dodds. I'll second. Second by Commissioner Dodds. Comment by Commissioner Obama.
I too have no problem with a business trying to improve themselves and add on to different ways to make money. But in this case, it is the gateway into Fire Mountain. It is the gateway to this new development. Just right down the street, the city spent a lot of money on landscaping by the train and the Sprinter, by across from Fraser Farms and all that area. And then we get to this corner, which I've been waiting. I mean, the Red Rooster kind of improved their little paintings and all that. It kind of made it look a little nicer. But this corner still has always looked like it has. And I was just hoping that maybe a CUP would trigger something, like just maybe a couple of street trees or something. But so I guess I'm not super happy with this approval, and I probably will vote negative just because of that reason. I just thought we wanted to spruce up the neighborhood a little bit better than allowing this just to go. I have no problem with the truck idea and all of that, but just maybe a few street trees would have been nice.
Yeah, I agree, Louise. I used to live up on Kurt Street up there in Fire Mountain, and that was back in 1990, early 90s. And that site has always been, for lack of a better word, not very attractive, bordering on sort of hideous. So, but kind of going along with your thoughts, don't want to stand in the way of a business trying to improve what they're doing and adding some additional services. Possibly as development happens more in that area, because I know there's across the street on Crouch, a large development going in. Possibly over time, somebody else will buy that parcel and do something a little bit more attractive than it is right now, because right now it is kind of a sort of an eyesore, if you will. So.
I have a question on this, where we have all of the, you have the permanent storage container that was not shown on the drawing at all, on the diagram, and all of the other cars. Now, once this gets going, are they going to continue to have those cars there? Are we going to have more cars come in there? I'm looking at this, I go by this, my church is right up that area, so I go by there a couple of times on the week, but, and I can see where they're saying it's gonna get crowded, it looks bad, and I don't see where it's gonna actually look better by putting in 6 more trucks without doing something with the vehicles and the storage unit that is there. Is there any way that we can add to this by asking them to move some of that, or border, or screen off, or something?
Question. I'm not sure that there's much, the way those vehicles are parked, they're likely, there's a number of things that could be happening there. It could be vehicles waiting to be serviced or vehicles that just got serviced. They could be vehicles, I think one of the commissioners mentioned, they see them for sale sometimes. They don't have a license to sell vehicles there, so that's something that if someone was aggrieved by that, they can contact code enforcement. Code enforcement can do an investigation on that. So that might eliminate some of that. While we can't say that there's not going to be vehicles parked similar to what was depicted in the photographs, we can say that we have conditions that limit to where the proposed U-Haul trucks can be parked. So condition number 9 outlines that they have to be parked in the 6 spaces that they're shown on the plan. Condition number 10 says rental trucks shall be delivered to customers in a designated pickup and drop-off location on the property. Trucks shall not hinder ingress or egress at the site or block any required parking or obstruct drive aisles. And condition number 11 says no display of or parking of rental trucks shall occur in front of the business or at the corner of Oceanside Boulevard and Crouch Street. So we can't dictate with this use permit how those vehicles are currently parked. We can dictate where the proposed U-Haul vehicles can be parked and how it is supposed to operate. It's not supposed to have a negative impact on ingress and egress out of that site. So I'm not sure if that gives you an assurance that while we're not going to be able to physically screen them, that would be nearly impossible. We can dictate their locations, and if they're found in violation of that, we could go to the extent of bringing this conditional use permit back to this body for enforcement activities. So we're comfortable with those conditions and the operation of this aspect of that business.
And understand, my question about the diagram that Rob, that you had up there was, it seemed to differ from what the verbiage was in the document that I read earlier that said that they would be along the south side back wall, not in front of the business. Yet the 3 or 4 spaces that are up to the upper right corner in the diagram that you showed were actually right adjacent to Oceanside Boulevard and in de facto in front of the business. So it seems to be a little bit of a disconnect. I think with the limits of where they should be parked, and if they are in fact on that south side along the back wall, understanding all the concerns that were presented here, but that puts them in a very defined space. What you depicted in there seems to be a little bit more two different locations with both of them somewhat in front of the business. And so I think that makes it more challenging to enforce from a code perspective and the conditional use permit if granted. So that was really my concern, was if we can mitigate and minimize where they are, and per the description that I read earlier, I believe it said the south side. And again, maybe it's not clearly north, south, east, west. I might be challenged directionally there, but that back wall adjacent to Loma Alta Creek and the railroad tracks, to me, minimizes the impact on the surrounding areas. And that, to me, is the most likely location, and it is in fact not in front of the business. It's not either on Crouch, nor is it on Oceanside Boulevard, but the diagram that you had showed them on Oceanside
It
Boulevard.
is what you want.
So,
Oh, it is?
Yeah,
Crouch versus Oceanside, that's the
yeah.
trucks, it's against the wall.
Oh, the trucks are in red.
That's the red.
Okay, I thought they were in the blue.
No,
My,
no.
my mistake. Okay.
and just for
Then I think that
clarification,
that's enforceable. If that's where they are, that's about as good as we can ask it to be.
for clarification, Commissioner
about
Malik,
that.
those blue spaces are for customers of the service facility, the code required spaces for the service station customers.
That wasn't it? No, that wasn't in my package. No, I didn't get the diagram.
So we've got a motion and a second.
Both. Yeah.
So if there's no other discussion, we can vote.
Let the record show that the motion passes 4-2 with Commissioners Balma and Malik voting no.
We gotta do something. I'm not against this. Yeah.
The next item on the agenda is item 5, consideration of a regular coastal permit requesting the construction of a 50-square-foot second-level deck accessory to an existing 2-story single-family residence at 2016 South Pacific Street and the South Oceanside Neighborhood Planning Area and the appealable area of the local coastal program. The project site is designated single-family detached residential by the city's general plan, low-density residential by the city's local coastal program land use plan, and is zoned R1. New second-level deck at 2016 South Pacific Street. Applicant Ashley Prickles, P word,
Kosovitz.
Prosovitz, okay.
Kosovitz.
Thank you.
It's a hard one.
That's a good one. Okay. Disclosures. Let's start on your side.
Read the staff report, and I read the staff report, and I did go by the area.
I did the same.
I also read the staff report, went by the building.
I did the same.
Oh, we're doing this. Staff report and drive-by.
Staff report.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. I am Natalie Vasquez with the Planning Division, and I'm here tonight to discuss Agenda Item Number 5 for regular coastal permit RC 23-00001. The applicant is requesting a regular coastal permit for the construction of a 50-square-foot second-level deck to an existing 2-story single-family residence at 2016 South Pacific Street. The project site is situated within the coastal zone and the South Oceanside Neighborhood Planning Area. The property has a land use designation of coastal residential low density and is located within the R1 Single-Family Residential Zoning District. The property is bordered by single-family residential to the north, south, east, and west. The property also lies within the appeal jurisdiction of the California Coastal Commission. Therefore, a regular coastal permit is required for the construction of a 50-square-foot second-level deck. The deck would be situated within the primary bedroom on the second floor, specifically along the west elevation. A portion of the bedroom's wall and windows would be removed, and in its place, a new La Cantina-style door would be installed connecting the bedroom with the deck. The deck would be designed with wood railings at a height of 42 inches and supported by 2 6x6 posts. Both the decks and the post would be painted to match the existing color and design of the residence. The proposed deck would expand the footprint of the existing house to 2,400 square feet and would comply with the 40% lot coverage limitation in the R1 district. No additional changes are proposed to the residence or the project site. Therefore, the project complies with applicable development standards for the R1 district within the city's zoning ordinance. As detailed in the staff report, staff has evaluated the project and finds it consistent with the local coastal program, the general plan, and the zoning ordinance. There will be no impact to public coastal access, and the project is proposing an ancillary structure to an existing single-family resident in the form of a 50-square-foot second-level deck, which is consistent with the intent of the low-density residential designation. The design of the second-level deck would seamlessly blend in with the existing French Normandy-style architecture of the residence and adjacent properties that have existing second-level decks. And as noted in the previous slide, the project complies with the development standards within the R1 zone. Therefore, staff recommends the Planning Commission confirm issuance of a Class 3 categorical exemption per the California Environmental Quality Act, Article 19, Section 15303, for conversion of new construction and conversion of small structures, and approve regular coastal permit RC 23-00001 by adopting resolution number 2024-P07 with findings and conditions of approval attached herein. This concludes my presentation. Staff is available for any questions. A rep should also be available for any questions.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Commissioner Rosales.
Thank you, Natalie.
Yes.
Clarification or a question. Looking at the staff report on page 1, it indicates that the project site was developed with a 2-story, 4,059 square foot residence. Mm-hmm. And on page 2, there's language indicating that the proposed deck would expand the footprint of the existing house to 2,400 square feet.
I could clarify that. So there is a difference between floor area and lot coverage. In this case, lot coverage just is the roof line of the property, whereas floor area calculates both the first story and the second story. So I could clarify that in future staff reports.
Okay, and then my second part of the question is, what is the lot size in square footage? I see you have, staff report is 0.14 acre lot. What does that convert to in square feet?
6,000 square feet.
6,000 square feet? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Mary Sue?
Chair, we do not have any slips on this item tonight.
Okay, so that ends the public Would anybody like to come forward and address this issue? We see none. Bring it back to Planning Commission. Commissioner Obama.
I would like to make a motion to confirm issuance of a Class 3 category exemption for new construction and approve the coastal permit. It's a very nice house, whoever's house it is out there. It's beautiful, and thank you for improving your property.
I second.
Okay. Can we vote? The next item on the agenda is a consideration of a regular coastal permit and variance to allow an existing unpermitted 326 square foot balcony accessory to an existing multifamily apartment unit, and this is relative to Unit 3, and a request for a variance to exceed the maximum allowable lot coverage of 40% in the R1 district. The project site is designated single-family detached residential by the city's general plan, low-density residential, by the city's local coastal program land use plan, and is zoned R1 per the city zoning ordinance. The project site is located in the appealable area of local coastal permit, Garst Residence at 1842 South Pacific Street, applicant Shane Garst. Commissioner Anthony, disclosures?
Staff report.
Staff report and met with the applicant on site to take a look at the property.
I read the staff report and I spoke with the applicant.
I read the staff report, visited the site.
I read the staff report, spoke to the applicant, visited the site.
Read staff report, and I visited the site.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you, Chair. Rob Dimachowski again, and here to present a request for a regular coastal permit and a variance to allow a new balcony accessory to a multifamily unit. The project site is located at 1842 South Pacific Street on the east side of Pacific Street, south of Cassidy and north of St. Malo. Surrounding properties are developed with a variety of single-family homes, accessory dwellings, and multifamily units. The 5,953 square foot parcel is developed with 3 legally established apartment units constructed in 1951. Unit 1 and 2 are attached and located fronting on Pacific Street, and Unit 3 is located above a detached garage. A portion of the garage was recently converted to an accessory dwelling unit under the city's ADU ordinance. The site has a coastal land use designation of low-density residential and is located within the appeal jurisdiction of the Coastal Commission. The property is zoned R1, single-family residential. Surrounding properties to the north, south, and west are also zoned R1. Properties to the east of Pacific Terrace Alley between Cassidy and Vista Way are zoned R3, and then the R1 continues further south into St. Malo. The project originated in June 2023 when the applicant submitted a building permit to remodel and repair all of the existing units. Staff determined during plan check that the existing second-story balcony attached to Unit 3 was new unpermitted construction. The applicant was informed that a new balcony in the coastal zone in the appeal jurisdiction, it requires a regular coastal permit. The applicant submitted an application for a coastal permit in September 2023, where it was determined that the existing balcony exceeded lot coverage. Therefore, the applicant is requesting a regular coastal permit to allow an existing unpermitted balcony accessory to Unit 3 and a variance requesting to exceed the maximum allowable lot coverage of 40% in the R1 district with a proposed coverage of 47%. The existing balcony is approximately 326 square feet and attached to Unit 3, which is located above the detached structure at the rear of the property. The balcony is constructed of wood with 5 support posts and is accessed from 2 new sliding doors in Unit 3. The balcony is 13 feet in height as measured from the top of the railing. A coastal permit is subject to consistency with the local coastal program and compliance with the zoning ordinance. Consistency with the local coastal program is contingent upon the granting of a variance to exceed the lot coverage in the R1 district. A variance is a mechanism that is intended to resolve practical difficulties or unnecessary physical hardships that may result from size, shape, or dimensions of a site that makes strict compliance with zoning requirements infeasible. As justification for the request, the applicant generally states that the lot coverage is consistent with other R1 properties in the vicinity developed with higher lot coverage allowance, and that many properties in the vicinity were developed under 60% lot coverage per the R3 and RHU zoning standards. To provide some background on the project site, prior to 1958, this section of South Pacific Street on the east side was zoned R3, and dating back to the early 40s, properties on this street developed with a mix of single-family homes, multifamily units, as well as detached garages, which were allowed. And in 1958, the City Council adopted an update to the zoning ordinance known as the 1958 zoning ordinance, which effectively rezoned this block of South Pacific Street to R1, which was called one family residential zone at the time. And per Article 35 of the zoning ordinance for nonconforming uses and structures, any structure on a lot by reason of height, area, or yard requirements that is conforming prior to the effective date of the zoning ordinance or an amendment thereto shall be deemed to be conforming, provided that any additions, alterations, or changes conform to all provisions of the current zoning ordinance. And prior to 1958, the 1950 zoning ordinance regulated land use. The R3 district allowed multifamily units and accessory structures. Development intensity was regulated by setbacks. There was also height, but there was no specified lot coverage in the 1950 zoning ordinance. And then in 1958, the update introduced a maximum lot coverage of 40% for the R1 district. And the 1986 ordinance established the R1 single-family residential district, which was certified by the California Coastal Commission, and lot coverage remained unchanged. The zoning changed from R1 to RS single-family in 1992 as part of the citywide comprehensive zoning update. However, in 2009, the California Coastal Commission determined that that version was not certified. Therefore, the coastal zone, with the exception of downtown, reverted back to the certified 1986 zoning ordinance. Consideration of a variance is subject to meeting 4 required findings. Staff finds that the request is not consistent with the requisite findings with detailed justification provided in the resolution. A detailed description of the applicant's justification is also provided in the staff report and as an attachment with the project description. The first finding states that because of a special circumstance or conditions applicable to development site, including size, shape, topography, location, or surrounding strict application of the requirements of this ordinance, deprive such property of privileges enjoyed by other property in the vicinity and under identical zoning classification. Staff finds that a special circumstance does not exist because the existing units were constructed in 1951 prior to establishment of the R1 district, and per Article 35, structures that were legally constructed prior to the establishment of the ordinance are considered conforming, except that any new additions must comply with current code. Many properties in the area were constructed in the same time period and are now subject to the same R1 standards and would also be subject to a coastal permit. A review of R1 properties in the project vicinity identifies 4 similar properties with an existing dwelling unit located above a detached garage at the rear of the property. Other than external staircases, none of the identified structures had attached balconies or accessory structures. Therefore, there is no evidence that strict application of the requirements of this ordinance deprives such privileges enjoyed by other properties in the vicinity and under the same zone classification. Finding 2, that granting the application will not be detrimental or injurious to property or improvements in the vicinity of the development site or to the public health, safety, or general welfare. The balcony was constructed without the benefit of a building permit. Consistency with this finding would be contingent upon approval of a coastal permit and securing a building permit, which cannot occur unless the variance was granted. Finding 3, that granting the application is consistent with the purpose of this ordinance and will not constitute a grant of special privilege and consistent with limitations on other properties in the vicinity and in the same zoning district. The existing balcony was constructed without the benefit of a building permit, and under current code, all new construction in the appeal area of the coastal zone, including balconies and other accessory structures, is subject to approval of a regular coastal permit. A review of regular coastal permit applications along this section of South Pacific Street indicate that all projects were evaluated in accordance with the 40% lot coverage requirement. Many of the existing properties that exceed lot coverage were constructed prior to 1958 and were not subject to a lot coverage requirement per the 1950 zoning ordinance. While it is acknowledged that certain properties do exceed the 40% coverage, staff found no recent record of entitlements or building permit applications in the R1 district that were approved under a 60% lot coverage standard. The applicant created a nonconformity by constructing a balcony without a benefit of a permits, therefore granting approval of a variance for an unpermitted deck exceeding lot coverage would constitute a grant of special privilege inconsistent with the limitation on other properties in the area and under the same zone district. In the fourth finding, for properties located within the coastal zone, that granting the application is consistent with applicable policies of the certified land use plan of the local coastal program. The project is found inconsistent with the LCP based on noncompliance with the development standards in the zoning ordinance that would otherwise occur without the consideration of a variance. Staff finds that the regular coastal permit and variance request are inconsistent with the requirements of the local coastal program and zoning ordinance. Therefore, staff recommends that the Planning Commission by motion deny regular coastal permit RC 2313 and variance V2401 by adopting Planning Commission Resolution 2409 with findings. This concludes my presentation. I'm available for questions. The applicant is in attendance tonight and has a presentation as well.
Thanks, Rob. Yes, go ahead.
Rob, I have two questions. First one is just explain again lot coverage definition, because we heard that from our last presentation. And when I looked at the past one we just approved, there was a 50-foot addition of a balcony, and it shows that the lot coverage was the same after it was added on. So I saw that, and then over here now it's actually increased the lot coverage. They both don't have a roof over the balcony at all. So can you just give me that definition one more time so I can understand that?
Sure, Commissioner Obama. In simple terms, lot coverage is the square footage of all structures that are over 30 inches in height, and it's essentially the footprint of those structures, including eaves, that are calculated as lot coverage. So if there was a second story, the overall square footage of a floor area is not included in the coverage, just the footprint of all covered structures over 30 inches.
Well, that's what I thought, but I guess maybe it is some kind of with the last project, it didn't catch that, but that was just a definition. I just wanted to make sure that was correct, which is what it was. The second question is that when I was reading the staff report, I came across ADU a couple of times. And I know when an ADU, you're not supposed to do short-term rentals, because I personally am doing an ADU and I had to sign a declaration with the city. And also, I was also given a lot less fees as far as when I was permitted. All my fees were different. It was a lot cheaper. So in this case, this is not in relation to the balcony, but the ADU is not an ADU, because when I did the Google search, I saw the short-term rental came up. And so that actual area that's ADU is no longer. So a definition of ADU is, from what I understand, is that you're not supposed to rent as a short-term rental, correct?
Commissioner Balma, for this property, allow me to clarify. The property is developed with 3 legal multifamily units, and under state law, as well as reflected in the city's ADU ordinance, it's considered a multifamily property, and there are specific provisions in Article 30, Section 3006 that relate to multifamily that allow up to, there's 2 versions, up to 25% of the unit count. There can be an ADU converted from non-habitable space. That can be an existing garage or garages, or 2 detached ADUs that are completely separate from the existing structures, subject to 4-foot side and rear setbacks and a height of 16 feet. So on this property, a portion of the garages were converted into an ADU, and there is a requirement that under those provisions, the new ADU cannot be rented more than 30 days. No short-term rentals are prohibited. However, the existing multifamily units are not prohibited from short-term rentals if they were already in existence.
Great, that answers my question.
Commissioner Dodds.
So, so the question I have, in your opinion, had they done this right and they submitted for a permit to build this, would it have been granted?
Commissioner Dodds, we look at the application as it comes in. So if per the zoning ordinance and the local coastal program, any additions or accessory structures would require a regular coastal permit. If the applicant had checked in advance, we would provide info that what the lot coverage is. And typically we don't know the lot coverage until we see a site plan and determine the existing and proposed coverage that would occur as part of a formal application. Or there's some circumstances where a building permit is applied for unknowingly within the appeal jurisdiction. So if outside the appeal, a regular coastal permit's not always required. So sometimes it'll be noted during plan check that it exceeds lot coverage, and it's not uncommon for us to provide a compliance letter stating that a coastal permit must be obtained prior to further review or issuance of a building permit.
Okay, because this seems more like ask forgiveness than permission. I guess I'm struggling with the fact that they built this unpermitted. There's is the garage, the portion of the garage, is that also short-term rental as well?
So under ADU laws, Rob explained, the ADU itself cannot be utilized for any aspect of the short-term rental operation at that property. It's supposed to be solely for a long-term renter habitable space.
Okay.
Are there any other questions for Rob?
Not right now.
Okay, I don't see any, so thanks, Rob. So the applicant is in the house?
Going to present the facts here, and you'll see lots of photos I have.
Could you identify yourself, please?
Sorry, Dr. Shane Garst. I am an Oceanside resident over 40 years. I'm not an out-of-towner. My wife's born and raised here, military family. I have a doctorate in anesthesia. I saved lives at UCSD, and we just bought Tri-City. We'll be taking over that again soon. My wife works at Kaiser, and this property was built to house medical professionals. That's me and my family. Hopefully they won't show you any more pictures of them later, but I did OPD, Citizens Police Academy last year. So this was the balcony in 2023. You can see my house right in the middle on the bottom. Balcony's there, it's a big courtyard. And you'll see the next door neighbor's house eventually as well. Right now they're telling me, my house is on the right. They're telling me that that's 50%. They were actually granted over 60%. This is the house exactly right next door to me. I have a driveway, big courtyard, and I'm the only one on this block with any courtyard. So they're granted 60% lot coverage, R3. We are both R1 with R3 occupancy, and the facts will continue. So by them granting the balcony, it's not doing any harm to anybody. So there's a couple excerpts from the LCP handbook. Minor development is consistent with the LCP, requires no discretionary approvals, has no adverse effect, individually or community on coastal resources. From 1999, we have Peter Douglas. Here's an excerpt. I write to urge you to give direction to and remind persons who utilize these maps that over time circumstances affecting jurisdiction can change. Further refinement of these jurisdictional boundaries may be necessary through verification on the ground, which I've asked for over a year. My first permits were December 2022. Everyone has refused to come see it in person. At some instances, the maps may be in error. More specifically, I want to underscore the need for close coordination between your staff and Coastal Commission. The point I want to stress, this is all out of the LCP handbook, is the need for increased coordination between local government and staff. While the post-LCP jurisdiction maps are generally reliable, should continue to be used, in some situations above, we recommend the local government coordinate with commission staff in order to provide certainty and to avoid situations where an applicant is advised incorrectly as to CDP jurisdiction. This is from Russ Cunningham, one of the planners who was working with me at the beginning, and then Sergio told them not to talk to me anymore. He wrote in this email, you need a regular coastal permit. I told you the deck would require an administrative coastal permit. That's incorrect. So from the California Coastal Commission, this is where it all got started. I'm not a contractor, I'm not a builder, but the coastal development, when is one required? Certain activities may be exempt from permit requirements. Some improvements to existing legal structures that do not pose an environmental risk and are not located in or adjacent to areas with certain sensitive coastal resources or between the shore and the first public road. I'm not. I'm in a private courtyard. The senior attorney for the California Coastal Commission, Robin Mayer, we have and do frequently issue waivers for development in our jurisdiction after receiving a coastal development permit application and then determining that permit action isn't necessary. I attached some of the waivers from 2023. This is from Pacific Beach. Roof decks, 1,000 square feet. This is another one from Solana Beach, 1,000 square foot deck. Another one from March 2023, another 1,000 square foot deck in Solana Beach. More staff emails. Even Russ Cunningham, it is unusual to have a 3-unit development in a single family zone. Correct. I should be a multifamily. I've been multifamily since 1950s. We'll continue here in a second. Darlene, if someone appeals a decision through the commission, which though we don't expect that in this case, Darlene said that she would meet with planning staff, draft accounting of fees, flow charts. A week later, I don't have the opportunity to sit down with the staff and talk to them about this. Darlene told me there'd be no need for engineering and geotech, which will come in later. They both asked for reviews. This is the actual chart that Darlene sent me. I didn't touch this one bit. This is what she emailed to me and said this is the follow. I didn't write one thing on this piece. I'm requiring a property line survey for the adjacent property, which is 60%. So here's the main evidence from the county assessor records from 1951. I'm zoned R3. I pay residential multifamily taxes. The legal description's from 1890. So more evidence for R3 multifamily. This is from the City of Oceanside in December. Your utility account from multifamily 3 unit to multifamily 4 unit. Your current bills will reflect a 4-unit property, which should be 60%. I have 4 separate electric panels, pay 4 separate electric bills. The water, 4 dwelling units. Trash, 4 units. Property insurance, there's separate buildings. I have to pay multifamily for the separate buildings. This is all my permits. So for each unit, I needed to get separate permits. And it's been since December 9th, 2022. That was the first building remodel. These are all the different reviews I've had to go through for multiple unit, multifamily. So they want multi. So just more delays, remodel for each unit, separate permits, more permits, more permits. These are all my permits. HVAC for each unit. These are all multifamily. Water heaters for each unit I had to get separate. Came onto the coastal balcony. Engineering and geotech both returned for comments. Every one of my reviews was over 35 days, and this is going to come into play for my next set. The neighboring property, just a few houses down, 1830 South Pacific, they got a second review, coastal permit, 7 days. 1912 South Pacific, this is 10 years ago, 48% was granted. 2 of the people here on the commission were actually approved that in 10 years ago. It was a multifamily, 1912 South Pacific. There it is. 1 St. Malo was just granted 42% plus covered patio. That was in January this year by everybody. So this gets to my next door neighbor, 1902 South Pacific. New unit on the 2nd floor with a deck, a remodel. I will read you the scope of work. Their second round was returned in 7 days. They were requested a coastal permit, but they were advised by planning just to do an SB9 so they don't have to get a coastal permit. So there's no coastal permit for the next door neighbor. Everything was exempt to build this massive compound. The scope of work for 1902 South Pacific, the purpose of this project is to remodel the full first floor, demo portion of existing roof, and add a unit on the second floor with a new deck. That's the scope of work. This is their actual plan. I have the approved plans here. Lot coverage, 56%, R3 resident. This is my next door neighbor. It was granted this last year. And you could see from the photos, these aren't doctored at all. I'm the only one with the driveway. So I'm gonna start showing you photos. The multifamily across the street, there's two 12-unit complexes that are butting up to me. This is 2 doors down, it's over 50%. This started, this is the remodel for the neighbors. Here's my balcony. And you'll see over time, I don't see any portion of the roof to remain. Construction, you'll see how big it gets over time. It's within a 5-foot setback on the plans, it's 4 feet, but they said it's okay, so that adds another couple hundred square feet. Everything's been documented, so this is not, I don't see how my balcony's intruding on any of these neighbors. Look at, I have no view now. And anybody that sees it could see all the multifamily are surrounding me. That's the view now. Still the neighbors. But then we'll see down the street how all these, there's a good 6 or 7 of them. They're all multifamily. This is another 12-unit complex. My house is in the middle, so 2 12-unit complexes right east of me. This is looking, my house is up in the left corner. You see this 12-unit and these multifamily next to me. So Sergio's numbers here, these are, I'll show you why these are all. Next door neighbor says 50, it's actually 60. And for 1912 was 48% we just saw, that was granted. And then these two, 1920 and 1922 are showing under 40%. But let's look at these photos. So I paid the satellite guy, this is 60% for 1922. We're gonna get back to that in a second. These are the 4, mine's on the left. I have the only one with the courtyard. These are the next 3 there. And then 1920 and 1922. This is from Google Earth. These are the exact same camera angle, 96 meters. Those are not under 40%. Here's the one from the other day. They're saying these are under 40%. That's just not true. You could do the math. Anybody, you could just look at it. That is not under 40%, both of those houses. This to the left, this is by Cassidy. These are a few other. Lot coverage of 50, 60%. All the yellow is the support neighbors. I could get all of them except for 2. The 2 that are here are against me. But here are some support letters. We could get more. I want to save some time for after. So these are the reasons. Because my next door neighbor, I don't feel like this is intruding on anybody. And I also want to say that if they come up and speak, I don't want any pictures of my children. The neighbors were taking pictures of my family and children yesterday, and I don't want any of that shown, okay? I did file a police report for harassment from the next door neighbors for harassing my family yesterday, and I don't think that's appropriate. I do have short-term rental permits that are valid. I do have temporary building permit of occupancy for the upstairs. You could see it online. I've paid every month. So I'm allowed to go to my property whenever I want. I have all the appropriate building permits. And the balcony was made for the ADU. So the ADU, the only shade it gets is from that balcony, because the other side is the alleyway. So that's why I built it. And I also put that in there 6 months ago, and they're like, no, it doesn't count, even though in the state law, it does show you could have some shade. There's no other access, because the access is only to the stairs that go to the upper unit.
Sir, you've got about 8 minutes and 34 seconds for rebuttal. You had 20 minutes and you've used almost 13 minutes, so just FYI.
I'll save that, yeah.
Okay.
You have a question?
Thank you, Chair. Boy, a lot of questions on this one. I had some questions for staff. Maybe this is a combo staff and city attorney question. So the staff report lays out a pretty good understanding, I think, of what's going on here. I'm a little bit caught up in the moment with the applicant's presentation on jurisdiction. So that's where I'm going to go with my question. Jurisdiction between the city and its local coastal plan and the Coastal Commission, because, I mean, the applicant presented some information, emails and whatnot, and policy, information pulled from policies by the Coastal Commission that indicate or suggest anyway that if there's some kind of, I'll call it minor improvements going on, it sounded like he started this with a improvement on the existing structures to make it more livable. I guess question one then would be presented by the applicant to my question, is that valid? In other words, if the Coastal Commission presents information to the applicant and says, hey, if it's minor, no need for a coastal permit, is that true? Where does the city fit into this? Okay, I'll stop there because, I mean, again, I have a zillion questions, but let's just start with the jurisdictional question. Where do we land with that?
I'm happy to answer that question, Commissioner Rosales. In the absence of a certified local coastal plan, then the jurisdiction would fall to the California Coastal Commission. The city has a certified local coastal plan. It's very clear that any additions to properties within the appeal jurisdiction require a regular coastal permit. Mr. Garst reached out directly to the Coastal Commission staff, and they referred him back to the City of Oceanside for the processing of a regular coastal permit.
And there's no question on that. If there's a local...
There's absolutely no question on that.
Okay, so we'll leave that alone. It looks like, per the staff's report, that the existing coverage prior to doing the balcony or any improvements was about 42%. Let's call it 42% per the staff report. Staff report says 41, but I did the math and it came up with about 42%. Had Mr. Garst never done any improvements, started the process of improving the property, did he fall under the pre-existing 1958 zoning requirement where you could exceed 40%? In other words, if he'd never disturbed the 42% lot coverage that he had prior to starting the work, it likely would have been left alone. Is that accurate?
So as Rob mentioned during his presentation, properties that were legally established can be maintained. So this property was legally established with 3 units with coverage that's right around 42%. We had a hard time verifying the accuracy of these plans, and so we brought it to you with the information that's provided. We can't guarantee that what's depicted on this plan is 100% accurate. But to your question, it's whether or not, had he not added this deck, could he continue to have those properties? Yes, the answer is yes. You could actually add to those properties if they were in conformance with the zoning ordinance. Because the addition is out of conformance with the zoning ordinance, it further exceeds the lot coverage, so it intensifies the nonconformity. It is not allowed to be permitted.
Yeah, and reading through the staff report, and this will be my last question, sorry, Chair. I guess maybe the applicant, so he started the process, code enforcement came out and said, well, you're doing an improvement, you really need to do a coastal, you need to pull a permit essentially. Reading the staff report, I guess I got the impression, or maybe the applicant did too, that the balcony, which was already built at that point, would be, at least in conversation, maybe something that could be approved now that he started the permit process. So
sure,
that would be the impression. Probably no promise made by the city, but at least an impression left with the applicant that, hey, maybe this will get through. And so here we are today, and clearly staff's recommendation is to deny that. But is that kind of accurate at least?
I could give you a little history,
sure.
Commissioner Rosales. So yes, this came in initially as a code enforcement case for unpermitted construction. The applicant can obtain permits to do the work that he was doing at the time, which did not include this balcony. The comment was made when there was found to be a balcony, and we have our code enforcement manager here, Kirk Munt, who might be able to perhaps attest to more accurately of the code enforcement history on this property. But the permit, sometime during the obtaining of a building permit to do the interior improvements to the property, a deck was added. The deck was never shown on the permit plans that the city reviewed. When the deck was added, it was noted that that's going to require a coastal permit. At the time we recommended that he apply for the coastal permit, we were not aware of the coverage situation. It did not become evident until the first review of the submitted coastal permit application that the property exceeded the lot coverage limitations. And that was articulated to the applicant, and that he had a couple options. One was to apply for a variance, which he was told at the time staff would have a hard time making the findings to support that variance, or he could comply with the requirement and remove the deck. So those are the options provided to him in his first review letter, and the applicant chose to apply for a variance.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
There's no other questions?
I would be curious to hear what the code enforcement issues or history is so that we can build some better context, please. Turn this one off.
Good evening, Chair, Commissioners. My name is Kirk Munt. I'm the Code Enforcement Division Manager, and I'm familiar with some of the issues on this property. Do you have a specific question regarding the deck?
I think it was, Sergio said that there were a series of issues with code enforcement, so if you could give us a summary of what those were, it may help us with some context as well.
Okay. Initially, the property was undergoing some renovation for interior improvements, as Sergio mentioned. That scope of work, unfortunately, was exceeded by the applicant. We detected the deck being built when we saw it from the alley. We issued a stop work notice at that point to cease all work until the permits were inclusive of all that work. Unfortunately, the applicant continued to build the deck and finished it. During a meeting that I had with the chief building official, Dr. Garst, and myself, Dr. Garst actually mentioned to me or stated to me that the deck was existing and that he merely improved it. However, this was very easily disproved by looking at the real estate photos that showed there was no deck in that location at the time that the property was sold to him. There's a drone photo that's very clear that shows there's no pre-existing deck in that location. So this was truly unpermitted. We did detect it during the renovation and called it out at that point until the remainder of the building permit for all the work except for this deck was obtained.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kurt. Do we have any speakers today?
Yes, Chair Morrissey, we have a Janice Brown. If you would like to come forward and speak, we'll give you 3 minutes.
We just have one?
Yeah, just one.
Okay, thank you.
I believe you all have it in front of you. My name's Janice Brown. I'm testifying on behalf of the trustees of the J. Rudger Brown Family Trust, owner of the home at 1840 South Pacific Street, which is north and adjacent to this property. The Brown trustees support the staff recommendation to deny a regular coastal permit and variance for the applicant's unpermitted balcony. My 3 siblings and I concur with your planning staff's findings and compliment them on their extensive research and objective analysis of this matter. In his application narrative, Shane Garst incorrectly describes our single-family home as a multi-family residence. He claims there's no impact from the Unit 3 balcony on his neighbor's general welfare. Our family disagrees with this assertion, as both our home security and our backyard privacy are impacted. Our parents, Jay Rudger and Ruth Brown, purchased our modest 3-bedroom home in 1973, in part due to the neighborhood's R1 zoning. In 1984, they retired to Oceanside and were full-time residents until their deaths in 2013 and 2015, respectively. For more than 30 years, our parents, lovingly tended to their backyard rose garden and the small patio where they entertained friends and family. Thanks to our parents, our extended family, that now number 42 total, will be making Oceanside memories for years to come, like we had. At first, we thought the Garst family would also live on their property and keep 1 or 2 long-term rentals. We became concerned when Shane ostensibly converted 3 of the 4 garages into an ADU, but the space actually functions as a recreation room shared by all 3 units that are short-term rentals. Without consulting us or securing a permit, Shane erected a sweeping ocean view, quote, deck on Unit 3 that allows its occupants to peer easily into our home patio and our rear windows of our home. State Coastal Vacations is marketing all 3 units on Airbnb as South Ohana, with group amenities and sleeping arrangements for up to 18 people, as shown on the reverse of your testimony there. If not removed, the balcony will become a popular gathering place for those renting Unit 3 as well as the other 2 units. Whether this upstairs unit rents on a short or long-term basis or becomes the owner's residence, it's still an unpermitted balcony that constitutes an invasion of our backyard privacy as well as a nonconformity with the R1 zone. So in summary, use of this balcony will be detrimental to our property's security and enjoyment as a single-family home. Thank you.
We do not have any more slips, but if there's anybody else that would like to speak, come forward, state your name for the record, and we'll give you 3 minutes to speak.
My name is Steve Beckerman. My wife and I are the owners of 1902 South Pacific. Ms. Brown had presented the same story as was presented to me by the purchaser of the property, Mr. Garst. He also happens to have a property development company. This isn't the first property that he's done. We were told the same thing. He's going to use that for weekends and rent the other 2 for long term. We've got 18 people being advertised for large groups coming in, plus people that they might have. The property I heard mentioned low density. Well, when you can sleep 18 people there, I think we're losing the concept of what a residential low density area is. People coming in for the weekend. The other thing is, it had been mentioned by Mr. Garst that it was just an interior remodels. I have pictures showing the whole building being remodeled, inside, out, sliding doors where windows were, doors taken out, sliding doors put in to where the deck went in. There's been, to my recollection, at least 2 red tags, which never stopped the people who were working on the house from within an hour or 2 going back with total disregard, continuing to work on the property. He had scaffolding outside when he was on the Pacific Terrace side. During a wind, the whole 40 feet of scaffolding fell into the street. It had never been secured. So I don't feel like he's trying to put us on trial for what we've done, which was have my wife spend over a year working with planning and building, approving things, getting an understanding of what we could and couldn't do. Our height is about 24 feet. It's not a monster. We built on the exact same existing footprint as required under our permit, plus an additional less than 158 square feet for ingress for the staircase. We have not a deck, because I've learned the difference between a deck and a balcony. We have a balcony. The new balcony, which was constructed on the upper floor, which is the SB9 unit that we constructed, was required to meet today's standards of a 20-foot setback. So we have the existing roof line maintained below. The second story, we have a balcony for the upstairs unit. We followed all the rules. We did everything that was asked of us. We tried to make something that would beautify the neighborhood, not any McMansion or anything like that. We've been on the property during the whole construction period.
Mr. Beckerman, could you conclude your statements?
Thank you for your time.
I see none. So, sir, you have some time if you'd like to address any of the things that came up.
Yeah, we'll just get back to the fact here. Facts are, I have a multifamily. I pay for multifamily. I should have a right to. I have all the permits paid for. This is the neighbors. That's not 20 foot. That's 15 foot. This is from June when they said the balcony wasn't on there. Balcony's been on the plans the entire time. Here is this is from Rhett and Savoy, the engineers for the balcony. Approved balcony. Here's December 9th, 2022, full building permit approved. It's just wrong. That's full building. And then on March 7th, after the first code enforcement was March 6th. I went in there, March 7th. Went in, talked to John Gomez. Put everything on the plans. Done. Sergio and Robert never once told me that they would deny the coastal permit that's based off of lot coverage. I was first working with Shane Elder for many months. He got fired. I was working, Natalie, Dane. I've dealt with so many different people. This is Robert from January 3rd, still saying that there was no denial in progress. August 29th, Russ Cunningham and Darlene. Awesome, I'll work with the assigned planner to move your application forward as expeditiously as possible. Some aerial shots from Kirk. Sergio Madera, still not saying that they were going to deny the permit. This is November 15th. Russ Cunningham, July 21st. This is the one we went over. June 15th, Cronin, in reference to the deck, add, is it existing? Add, provide details in June, which I provided. These are my actual plans submitted to A. Cronin. May 31st, the plan review turn time is 1 week. This is David Gans and Kirk Munt. Arthur Cronin again, I have not yet reviewed the drawings and no further feedback at this point. Russ Cunningham, the deck will require a coastal permit. No, I had to go to the city council to tell me to do the variance. Never once was I advised that they were going to deny this plan. And so, over a year. Shane Thompson, thank you, Shane. We're sending these over, and we'll send you the invoice. I've paid over $15,000 in fees The next door neighbor, 60%, 4,000. Shane Elder, September 18th. My yellow sign is up. 35 days minimum for all the returns. Here's Shane Elder. He last responded, I think, November, and then nobody else responded from the city until January, and then they told me they fired him. Darlene to Sergio and Shane, please forward the email you sent to Sergio so I could review the questions. Here is the next door neighbor using my house. I give him my phone number. I'm like, just come tell me if you guys need to do anything. They have an 18-wheeler in my driveway, putting a cement truck over my car, through my driveway. I'm like, guys, just tell me. Like, I don't understand what the issue is. Like, I don't care what you guys do, but just tell me I can move my car. I have cameras everywhere. This massive 18-wheeler in my driveway. They put this over my vehicle. And you tell me this is false? Yeah. Let's see if over the car. So, and also the other neighbors, they don't live here in 2 years. I have been watching the property for them. Her sister's here all the time. Her sister is a nurse practitioner. I do anesthesia. I've talked with her sister many times. There's been homeless people staying there. I told them politely to move their stuff in the driveway. So I don't understand what the issue is with the neighbors. Like, it's a 4-unit property. We have long-term renters, and we wanted to do some short-term, but obviously I'm just probably gonna get rid of that because the harassment is just unbearable, especially with the filing the police report, taking pictures of my family. It's just.
I just have a comment, nothing for the applicant. I don't have a question.
No, we're good, thank you. You've got 2 minutes remaining, if you'd like. Are you finished? Yeah. Okay, then we'll take it back to the council, or the commission, rather.
Thank you, Mr. Gars, for that information. So I guess a comment or comments, and then follow up with a question for staff. So it sounds like, all in all, the process for Mr. Garst and the city probably could have gone a bit smoother than it did, differently and smoother. I think a better understanding, not calling out either party, the city or the applicant, better understanding of what was allowed or not allowed, what the lot coverage was, whether or not a balcony could be constructed on the lot and so forth. But at the end of the day, I guess we're, as pointed out in the staff report, we're left with a non-conforming accessory structure on the property that goes over the lot's capacity. So I'm kind of stuck on that part. So I guess here's my question for staff. So if we uphold staff's recommendations to deny the variance, to allow the balcony to stay there and to exceed the lot coverage, it brings down the lot coverage to about 42%, back to the math I was doing earlier. Will the city at that point process the improvements that were done by Mr. Garst on the property aside from the balcony, or will he have to seek another variance to actually exceed the 40%?
Question. Mr. Garst has all the permits he needs, with the exception for a permit for the balcony itself. The permits that have been approved don't represent any intensification of the existing non-conforming condition. So other than getting a permit to demolish that deck, That's all he would need to obtain from the building division to close this matter. Does that answer your question?
It does, thank you.
Kirk, when was the stop notice issued, if you have the date?
I don't have the date with me at the moment.
Okay. But you did issue a stop notice. What was do you have an idea what percentage of complete the balcony was at that point?
At the time when the stop work notice was issued, we could see the floor portion without the railings, and we actually issued 2 stop work orders. However, the work continued despite those.
And then also, I thought I heard the applicant say that the deck was on the drawings, if I heard that right. Can you comment on that, Kirk? Sir, you're out of order. You're done.
Yes, I have actually looked at the drawings. The deck was illustrated on the drawings as existing,
Okay.
when clearly it was a new deck.
Okay.
Chairman Morrissey, the plans were depicted on the building permit plans that showed improvements to that unit. They were clearly marked that they were not part of the permit by staff because we didn't want to give the impression that the deck was being permitted. The work was completed, that was already in progress when the permits were issued. The work was completed and Mr. Garst was issued a temporary certificate of occupancy for that unit. One of those conditions is that no use of that deck be made until all this got sorted out.
He's got a DCO right now?
Yes,
Okay.
on that one unit.
Okay.
What's the TCO?
A temporary
Occupancy.
certificate of occupancy. So it just means there's conditions he has to perform to get a CO. Sometimes a bond's required, sometimes not. So, any questions? Well then,
Everybody's deep in thought.
normally, I'll just make a comment. Normally, I like to see a person able to enjoy their property, even if there's a variance. One of the things I did ask the applicant is, do your neighbors have an issue? And I didn't really get an answer to that, but I do have an answer tonight. So that makes it a little more difficult for me to buck the staff's recommendation.
Thanks, that was good. I agree with what you said. I too was hoping that the neighbors were going to be in support of you. I think when we spoke, that was one thing I said, like, if you can get your neighbors to support you, I think that we'd definitely feel good about it. And that didn't happen. And the only thing that really kind of rubs me wrong with this whole thing is that I too would probably have support the idea of a variance. But the disregard for the staff when they told you to stop work and you continued to work, it's almost like disrespect. And that's the only part that I have a really kind of a negative feeling about this whole thing, is that part, is about the disrespect to the staff. That's kind of.
Yeah, I guess for me, agreed. We want people to be able to enjoy their properties and do that. It became pretty clear that there was no permit here. And when it was discovered that work was being done, the cease and desist was given, or the red tag, whatever it may be specifically called, but yet the work was finished. So it just seems to be a disregard. I don't like the position that we're all in right here, but there was no permit requested prior to work being started.
Yeah, I'll jump on the train here. So I like what Mr. Garst has done to the property. He improved it. It looks really nice. The deck looks nice, actually. But again, back to what I said earlier, the process of getting here was clumsy at best. And so, and I probably, like Louise indicated, had it gone differently and been, I guess, upfront from all the parties from the very beginning, I think I would have supported a variance to exceed the lot coverage, no problem at all. Hoping, of course, that the neighbors were okay with it. But even if they weren't, I think it actually kind of looks really nice, and I would have supported a variance. So with that, I will, looks like we're probably at the point where we want to offer a motion. I'll offer a motion to support the staff's recommendation for denial. The applicant does have an opportunity, if we uphold the motion, to bring it forward to the city council. They may feel differently, but I think this body would rather have seen it, the outcome, that we would have arrived here at a different method. So I will, again, offer the motion to support staff's recommendation to deny the variance as proposed.
I'll second that. Okay. We have a second? Would you like to speak? Okay. So, all right, Commissioner Anthony seconds that. Okay. Can we vote?
Let the record show that the motion passes 6-0.
So I see we have nothing on the discussion items, miscellaneous actions. So we can go right to city planners, commissioners' reports. I'll start that I have nothing to report. Vice Chair Malik?
Nothing to report.
I also have nothing to report.
Nothing to report.
I want to report that, Tom, you did a nice job this evening for your first go at chair, so congratulations. Only a few items tonight. Wait until we get a big room full of experience, and then you'll be tested. But no, nice job, nice, good start.
Nothing to report.
Sergio?
Thank you, Chairman Morrissey. Only a couple items to report tonight. So for upcoming planning commissions for the month of May, we currently don't have any items scheduled. It's pretty certain that the first meeting in May is going to be canceled, and likely that the second one will too, but we have a little bit of time left to get our noticing done and stuff, so we will inform the commission accordingly. We don't have anything projected out till June at this moment either, so we may be dark a couple months. We're not 100% sure. And with respect to upcoming planning-related items at the City Council, this Wednesday, the Council will be considering the amendments to Chapter 24 of the Municipal Code with respect to short-term rentals. Of course, they will be taking forward they're going to be considering three options at this point. The staff recommendation, which has been modified since we brought it to this board. There's a recommendation that's based solely on the literal interpretation of council direction, and option 3 is the Planning Commission's recommendation. That staff report's been published, and if everyone has any questions about it, please feel free to reach out to me. And then moving on May 22nd, we have tentatively scheduled City Council's consideration of the Madeira Neptune project. That project did not come to this body because it's in the downtown district, and it went to the Downtown Advisory Committee for a recommendation to City Council, but it's of interest perhaps to the Planning Commission. I know Chairman Morrissey sits on the Downtown Advisory Committee and is aware of this project, but it's a really kind of a game-changing project with respect to our northern gateway to the city. When you get off the 5 and 76, it's the redevelopment of the Motel 6 site with a pretty intense development. It consists of 360 dwelling units and 62 hotel rooms with a subterranean parking structure. So that is an exciting project, catalytic for redevelopment of that area, and maybe will be one of the last areas redeveloped in that particular corridor of the town. So that's all I have for upcoming City Council items. I'm happy to answer your questions that the Planning Commission may have.
Sergio, I had one question. Am I on? this one's working. General plan updates. It's been a while since I think we've heard anything. Where's that heading, or what do we think we're going to see next?
Yeah, so the next the step that's moving forward in the general plan update is the release of the programmatic environmental report that's been being prepared for the project. That'll also accompany the release of the draft elements for public review and comment. So during the public review and comment of the EIR, staff will also entertain updates or comments on the draft elements themselves, with the goal of getting that in front of the Planning Commission probably sometime in mid-fall. Depends on the scope and nature of the comments received and how much effort it takes to address those comments on the EIR. So hopefully we'll get it to the Planning Commission for a recommendation to City Council in sometime the early mid-fall, and the City Council sometime late fall, early winter.
Cool. Thank you. Close this bad boy.